Bungie is implementing a massive buff for hand cannons, a 75% damage increase. And we'll get to that in a moment. They're going through their entire article, or their entire post on Twitter rather, where they were asking for feedback in Destiny 2, and they're actually answering all the questions, all the burning questions that we talked about. So we've got this week in Destiny, no longer TWAB, it's now the TWID. They go through everything they covered last week, everything they're going to cover this week. They have their Pride at Bungie and Transit Bungie section here, where they're actually giving out this emote here, and this is the code if you want to have this. And then there's also last year's transmat effect, and this is the code right there if you want that. It's there for you. And now they're breaking down some frequently asked questions sandbox edition. So here we go. Question number 1 is, in PvE, ability uptime is very high and has increased despite global changes to base cooldowns. What are the current thoughts on the ability energy economy? The ability energy economy is something we're always evaluating and adjusting. With the massive number of sources that can grant ability energy, it's always an area of concern. While we don't have any sweeping changes to announce today, this is a continual area of focus for us. Destiny's identity is fundamentally rooted in space magic power fantasies, but we don't want any ability uptime to balloon to a point where the power spike from active abilities ceases to become a spike and becomes the norm. So a big nothing burger response in terms of that. They're not giving us any sort of adjustments with that specifically. However, I will say that right now, or in the past, they have mentioned that there's about a 60-40 split. They want 60% gunplay and 40% abilities, so keep that in mind. That's kind of their approach. So there's always going to be a lot of abilities in Destiny. Question: with aspects, armor mods, and artifact perks that rely on players being able to throw or destroy their created tangles, the cooldown can feel frustrating. What is the intent behind the tangle creation cooldown time, and are there any plans to revisit it? During Strand development, we experimented with a significantly lower tangle creation cooldown time. When the tangle cooldown time was too low, combat became extremely chaotic, with random explosions going off all over the battlefield. We don't have any plans to go back to that level of uptime, but we agreed that the competition around tangles can be frustrating. In Season 22, we're currently planning on reducing the tangle cooldown time from 15 seconds to 12 seconds. So a buff to the tangle cooldown time, so a buff to Strand overall. So it looks pretty good. Next up, we got a question. Brood Weavers were intended to be the minions of Master of Strand, but Threadlings can feel underwhelming in high-end content, especially with the potency of Suspend. Are there any plans to adjust the relationship going forward? Suspend is ridiculously strong, and that's the reason why we really use Strand overall, especially in challenging content. And definitely the Threadlings are not that good at this point in time. Fun to use, but not especially potent. We're working on a two-pronged approach to this problem for Season 22. We can agree that it can be hard for Threadlings to feel valuable as combatant health increases in high difficulty PvE content. We also believe that Suspend is currently too strong in PvE. For Season 22, we're implementing a sizable increase in Threadling damage against PvE targets and reducing the duration and uptime of Suspend sources in PvE. In addition, we're making a change to the Broodweaver's newest Strand aspect, the Wanderer, to address community feedback regarding its potency. So there you have it. RIP, a nerf to the time of suspensions. And on top of that, we're going to have Threadlings are going to be buffed. So we'll see what the adjustments look like. Looks like Strand Warlock is about to be very strong though. Next up, we have question: how does the team feel about the current suite of grenades? While we want all grenades to feel viable, some grenades are fundamentally better suited to specific situations or modes. We don't expect perfect equalization as a role, but we want to avoid situations where a single option is clearly the best across many different combat roles. For Season 22, we're making some small adjustments to the uptime of a few underperforming grenade options. As we move forward, we'll continue to evaluate and adjust both overperforming and underperforming options as needed for the health of the sandbox. So nothing too crazy there with grenade changes, but we'll see what they monitor and see if there's any future changes in the future. The next one is a big one. This is the hand cannon one that we're talking about. Hand/will hand cannons get a buff, not quite to Shadowkeep levels, but at least something? Weapons team answer: note that hand cannons have been touched for several times over the past few years, and the current PvE damage numbers mean that compared to Shadowkeep, they currently deal roughly the same damage per crit and almost double the body damage. Reverting to Shadowkeep numbers would be a substantial nerf for anyone who ever misses a crit, which we're not planning to do. The overall balance of PvE has changed substantially over the last few years though, and some weapons have suffered as a result. We agree though, which is why hand cannons got an extra 20% damage in the Season 20 mid-season update. This didn't move the needle as much as we'd like. Hand cannons still struggle to find a niche in PvE. Their damage output is comparable to other weapon types, but reload speed is in a smallish magazine, making it painful to run out of ammo. There's some room to bump them up a little bit more against minor enemies, but what if they did what they looked like and became a primary ammo option for chunking down tougher single enemies? Here's what we're currently playtesting for future season. Numbers may still change, along with a quick preview of specific hand cannons that we felt languished more than. Increased reload speed at 0 stat by 15%. Benefit scales down at increasing stat, with 100 stat being unchanged. This is a substantial benefit to hand cannons with low reload stat, which includes several aggressive and precision hand cannons. So there you go. Gonna have a little bit of a faster reload, especially for those that are at 0. If you haven't seen how slow 120 RPM reloads at 0 reload, it's painful. PvE damage: increased damage against minor red bars by 20%, which is nice. Just across the board, 20% increase in damage for hand cannons, and increased damage against major orange bars by 75%. Hand cannons are about to be nasty inside PvE. They're about to be shredding adds, red bars, majors, everything. Heavy weapon burst hand cannons. Change the Warden's Law legendary hand cannon to be the first member of a new subfamily. Heavy burst hand cannon. These fire a 2-round burst and is overall much more satisfying to use than the previous version, while still benefiting from this some of the unique properties of the original. If you don't know what that is, that was one hand cannon that fired a 2-round burst, so kind of like a pulse rifle, kind of like the Crimson, maybe you could compare it to that. And it wasn't really good before, but apparently they're reworking some of that and creating its own archetype. Maybe it'll be good now. Question: kinetic weapons seem to be falling behind as builds get more intricate. Are there any plans or ideas to make them more interesting to help integrate them into builds? We've also noticed this. We've poked at the issue a little bit with the damage increase for Sunshield enemies and the Kinetic Tremors perk. We've also prioritized shipping more strand and stasis weapons in the kinetic slot to equalize those numbers a little and ensure that all slots can tie into build crafting. We're continuing to look at kinetic and have something planned on a year to the final shape timeline that may make them a little more unique, but maybe it's time for that kinetic subclass. Probably not. Interesting. Question: how's the team feeling about the current state of glaives? What about the exotics? We've got a substantial glaive tuning pass coming in a future season, aiming to make them more satisfying to use, particularly in PvP. Oh no, not a glaive PvP meta. Yeah, they're joking about a kinetic subclass in the last part. This is just, it's obviously a joke. I don't think that's the new subclass, but we're not happy with the current state of the class-specific exotic glaives and are making some major changes to them. When we touch glaives all up, this will likely take the form of adjusting how players activate the exotic perk along with some other changes. Got it. Question: how do you determine what gets nerfed and what gets buffed? Do those parameters change season over season? Just a comment on the persistent Bungie balances based on usage narrative. This is not the case. See below. We note that if something is wildly overused, in many cases that's because it's both strong and easy to use. Players typically won't flock to a specific weapon in droves if it's perfectly balanced. When we're deciding what to do for a balanced pass, we look at 5 main sources of information to identify what we look at: internal feedback from playtesting, 10+ hours of playtests a week, our own experiences playing the live game, playing the game heavily, and we carve out a little time each week to fire up those raids and trials. Live feedback sourced from players, weapon usage, and then weapon effectiveness, design analysis. Having pulled together a list of weapons, we'll go through them and identify what's contributing to the issues. In some cases, it's innate to the weapon itself and we'll just adjust it, but in other cases, it's a specific perk/perk combo, the overall weapon type, rather than a single weapon or lack of competition, and we can address the issue without touching the weapon. So they're going through the entire process of how they decide to buff or nerf things. A lot of people like to say that it's just based on usage. If the weapon is high usage, then they nerf that. It's not entirely the case. Yes, some of the logic for which weapons get attention changes depending on the focus of the season. If we have high representation of a weapon type in the seasonal artifact, we'll ship several new or prized weapons of a specific type or encounters that play well with specific weapon types. We'll dig into the matching weapons to make sure they perform well with the seasonal focus from other teams. For example, in the past, we've had seasons that revolved around high density close range encounters with matching artifact unlocks and revisited tuning of some machine guns and grenade launchers. Any further exotic tuning planned for the future, and what's the thought process behind those planned changes? All right, exotic tuning. This is what I'm very excited for right here. Just to give some context on timelines, we've just shipped Season 21. Season 22 is complete. Season 23 is in full production, and the final shape is entering early production. We have a small set of changes to exotic weapons coming in Season 22 that we've been playtesting for the last few months, including the long-awaited PvP nerf to Le Monarch, a buff to Touch of Malice, a couple of minor changes to other exotics. All right, I like this. Le Monarch, Touch of Malice, okay. And some tweaks to legendary perks such as Bipod. Ooh, Bipod buff, Shoot to Loot, and Under Over. Also bear in mind that the Zoom In, Damage Fall-Off Normalization, and Sword Guard rework are coming in Season 22 and affect exotic weapons as well. We've pulled several well-tested changes from Season 22 in the Season 21 mid-season balance update, which we'll talk about shortly before it ships. As usual, we're making an exotic catalyst for an older exotic weapon in Season 22, and this is one that's been heavily requested and is likely the most complex catalyst we've ever made. The process for exotic tuning is looking at pain points around over and underperforming weapons. What exotic are they making a catalyst for? What catalyst? I don't even know. Put your guesses down in the comments below. Process for exotic tuning is looking at pain points around over and underperforming weapons, and honestly, just looking at the Season 20 least used exotic weapons. We poke the list every season. Got it. Exotic armor and build crafting. Question: my favorite exotic armor could use a buff. Any plans to continue balancing legacy exotic armor? Armor team answer: there are many existing exotic armors that we want to see get more usage in the sandbox, and a few that still feel a little too strong. It is our intention to continue to balance exotic armor incrementally over time. You can look forward to the next batch of changes in Season 22. Got it. Question: can you explain the recent Stompies changes? Here we go. Stompies provides great neutral game benefit benefits that excel in PvP and have the potential to make it very difficult to target a hunter wearing them thanks to the unique nature of the hunter jump, which allows for rapid direction changes mid-air. Our goal was to make them a little less free so that the wearer can still gain their benefit, but with a small amount of downtime each time the player uses their dodge, which itself provides numerous benefits since many armor mods key off the use of your class ability. That being said, we will continue to monitor how Stompies is performing and will make further changes as necessary. There you have it. I talked a little bit about Stompies. Question: are there any plans for more exotic armor interactions with exotic weapons like Necrotic Grip, as with the weapons of sorrow? We feel these special connections between exotic are best when they are rare and a little bit hidden. That being said, we would like to add more of them to the game, especially for hunters and titans. Keep an eye out for the future. Question: will we ever see any of the pre-Lightfall armor mods come back? We are paying close attention to how the current armor mod system is performing, as well as how it's being received. It is our goal to use the base armor mods are straightforward and approachable. They should be the behind-the-scenes foundation of your build, not the star elements. We do want to experiment with fun and novel ways to interact with orbs of power, armor charge, and armor mod systems, and plan to do so via the season artifact. Got it. Here we go. Now we're on to miscellaneous questions. Can we favorite shader soon, please? Rewards UI popping in here to answer this one. We're hesitant to talk too much about the complex features that aren't far enough along to attach to a specific release. We are going to be sharing some new features in this vein real soon. Interesting. All right, we got some UI changes in regards to shaders. Very nice. Are there any details or confirmations regarding HUD updates that were previously mentioned? We'll talk more about this when we have something to show closer to the final shape. Do it for Saladin and that sweet emblem. Iron Banner is back. Let me know about your thoughts and ideas about all these questions that were answered as well. So Iron Banner's back next week, and then we also have the hashtag drown in the drip fashion contest. If you submitted your art, these were the winners. Got a hunter here, Oh no, a titan. Oh no, it's Patrick Star. Oh gosh. And then we've got more winners here. Oh, we've got the mask, Cyber Runner, got a Yoda Warlock. There you go. There you go. Those are all the winners. And then this is the PlayStation X Destiny 2 crossover art competition. So if you are an artist out there, deal with this. Is like some Ratchet and Clank vibes here. These are the winners of that competition. And then the player support report talks about the Trials emblem being fixed. So you basically are going to have to re-earn the Flight of the Pigeon medal every single game if you want to actually equip that emblem. So if you got it, you'll have to re-get it. And if you got it in air, then you'll have to re-get it properly. We got the movie of the week, the artist of the week, and that wraps up everything for the TWID. This week in Destiny article, definitely a spicy one. Happy to see Bungie actually give some communication on this crazy thread that they created on Twitter, and a lot of good stuff was responded to. And I feel like I'm kind of excited for the buffs to exotics. I'm excited for the hand cannon buffs. Comment down below what you're excited for though, and click right here if you want to see another video from this channel. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed. Smash the like button. I'll see you in the next one. Later.